So today, we're diving into something pretty unique, a sixth grade math lesson. Now, this isn't just any old math class. This is one that actually uses stories from the Bible to teach the principles of graphing. Let's see how they turn ancient scripture into modern mathematics. It's a pretty wild question, right? Can a miracle be a math problem? But that's the central idea behind this whole curriculum. We're going to explore how this lesson takes these ancient stories, yep, miracles included, and turns them into coordinate planes and data points. Okay, but before we can even start graphing Jacob's herds or Solomon's trade routes, we've got to get a handle on the core math concept here, and that's proportionality. So what does that actually mean? Well, simply put, it's when two things change at the exact same rate. If you double one, the other one doubles right along with it. If you triple one, the other one triples. That ratio between them, it just never changes. Now, here's how the curriculum makes this super simple for a sixth grader. It gives them this one big visual clue, what they call the big idea. If your graph is a perfectly straight line that goes right through the starting point, that 0, 0 origin, then bingo, you've got yourself a proportional relationship. It's a really simple rule of thumb. All right, so we've got the math foundation down. Now let's get to the really fascinating part. How in the world does this lesson take these famous stories and turn them into data you can actually plot on a graph? Okay, our first example comes straight out of the Old Testament, from the story of Jacob and his flocks. The lesson sets up a really simple rule for this. For every single season that goes by, Jacob's herds grow by a steady, predictable amount. And here you can see how that story becomes data. After one season, Jacob's got 10 animals. After 2 seasons, he has 20. And after 3, he has 30. The constant ratio is totally clear. It's 10 new animals every single season. So, since plotting those points gives you that telltale straight line going right through the origin, the lesson confirms it. The growth of Jacob's herd, it's a proportional relationship. Next up, the lesson moves from the pretty practical business of tracking herds to one of the most famous miracles in the New Testament, the feeding of the 5,000. So here, this incredible miracle is framed as a mathematical pattern. They start with what the source text says: 5 loaves feed 5,000 people, and that establishes a ratio: 1,000 people for every single loaf. From there, it's just simple math. 10 loaves would feed 10,000, and 15 would feed 15,000. And because that 1 to 1,000 ratio stays exactly the same, well, the lesson comes to the same conclusion. Mathematically speaking, this relationship is proportional. For the third and final example, the curriculum switches gears again. We go from agriculture and miracles to economics by looking at the trade routes set up by King Solomon. And we see the exact same principle at work. The lesson sets up a direct relationship. For every mile traveled, 5 units of goods get traded. So double the distance, you double the goods. The pattern is once again totally clear, consistent, and linear. So after walking us through 3 really different stories from different parts of the Bible, the lesson lands on the same conclusion every single time. Yep, they all fit the model of a proportional relationship. Okay, so after seeing all these examples laid out for them, the students are then asked to try this method out for themselves. So let's take a quick look at the homework to see how they're supposed to reinforce this idea. The homework problems just keep the theme going, pulling even more scenarios from a biblical context. You got students tackling everything from figuring out how many lamps you can fill with jars of oil to how many wells get filled by days of rain. Let's just walk through one of these real quick. For this talents for camels problem, the process is pretty straightforward. First, you find the base ratio. 1 talent of gold gets you 15 camels. Simple enough. Second, you build out the table. So 2 talents equals 30 camels, 3 equals 45. And finally, if you were to graph that, you'd get that signature straight line right through 0. But this lesson isn't just about plugging numbers into a formula over and over. It actually all builds to a bigger point, connecting the mathematical certainty you see in these graphs to a kind of moral framework. The lesson ends by presenting this verse from Proverbs, and here's the connection they make. Just like a proportional graph shows that steady, predictable, straight line of growth, the verse suggests that a life of diligent, steady planning leads to the same kind of abundant result. The math actually becomes a metaphor for a moral principle. And so this whole curriculum kind of leaves us with this really thought-provoking question. By weaving these 2 worlds together, worlds that seem so separate, the lesson is trying to show that maybe formulas can do more than just solve problems. Maybe they can actually illustrate principles. It's a really fascinating way to teach math, trying to give every single data point a much deeper meaning.